All right, where was I? Oh, yes, I was saying that when the radio show is done, the work will go on, so keep an eye on this site, and you did. So thank you for being here from Lake Wissota, where I always say it's another beautiful morning up north, so I figure that's just what we'll call this little visit here. My thanks to the Jaggernauts band out of Eau Claire for allowing us to use their little tune there that they called Kreitlow, for reasons we'll get into another time. Anyway, Todd Allbaugh joins me live in just a couple of moments, but first there's some breaking news to report this morning. White people commit fraud too. And I figured this is very timely given the announcement Monday morning that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is not going to run for a third term after all, in part because of the, shall we say, infatuation with a certain political talking point about Somali American fraud going on. So the breaking news that white people commit fraud too is going to come as a blow to those folks who want you to focus only on the fraud that's being committed by Somali Americans. I wonder why that is. Wink. If we could just cut through the bullshit racism for just a sec here. The sudden discovery of fraud charges against some Somali Americans in Minnesota, A, is not new, B, is not being kept undercover, C, the investigations go on and will lead to justice for those who commit fraud, and that's the important thing to keep in mind, because that's exactly what should happen, whatever your skin color, your ethnicity, your political stripe. Let me say that again. If you commit fraud or any white-collar crime, you should face the consequences and not get special treatment. If you're going to lash out and say too little was done about fraud in Minnesota, how about if we talk about the guy, David Gentile, who bilked $1.6 billion from investors and was sentenced last year to 7 years in prison, but he walked out after only 12 days. There's Mark Shapiro and Irving Stitsky, who were serving 85-year prison sentences for scamming $23 million out of people in a real estate scheme, but not anymore. Maybe you've heard of reality TV star criminals Todd and Julie Chrisley. They'd been serving prison time for bank fraud and tax evasion. That's cheating you out of your hard-earned tax dollars. They're not behind bars anymore. All these scam artists and many more have one thing in common. Instead of serving their time and paying back their victims, they're walking free because they were pardoned by Donald Trump, himself a convicted felon with a record of bilking donors, cheating vendors, lining his own pockets, all while having the audacity to say, hey, look, there's Somali American fraud going on over in Minnesota. Well, look, if you're going to call out fraud or other crimes, let's not pretend some group is worse than the others. Unless the others you're talking about are white people, because that's where the numbers are, and we're only scratching the surface with these examples. Fraud is wrong, no matter who does it. Switching gears, the same goes for drug-related crimes, by the way. Former Honduran president Juan Orlando Hernandez was convicted in 2024 in the U.S. of narco-terrorism, using his office to help hundreds of tons of cocaine enter the U.S. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison, but he's not behind bars now. That's thanks to a recent pardon by the same president who just this past weekend put American troops in harm's way to abduct Venezuela's wannabe dictator, allegedly on those same kind of narco-terrorism charges. Nicolas Maduro will be in a New York City courthouse on Monday, the same courthouse where Hernandez was convicted before he was pardoned. So if you sense a little cynicism about the Maduro move, well, just keep in mind the Hernandez pardon. Like the fraud cases, all that most Americans ask for is some consistency, and not to use our courts or even our military to play favorites. I hope that this has put the Somali American fraud cases into perspective, even given the news about Governor Walz not running for re-election, because it's not about excusing fraud. It's calling out the bullshit reasons why there's a sudden case of distraction that's going on here. We're going to talk to our guest, Todd Allbaugh, coming up next. I'm Pat Kreitlow. All right, here he is now, the one, the only, Todd Allbaugh, from the once conveniently named Todd Allbaugh Show. Look at that. I've even got to change your your description there under your name.
No, I'm still here on Wednesdays, but I'm not sure what I'm doing from 2 until 4.
Todd Allbaugh, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Patrick. How are you?
Good. Did you have a good holiday season?
I did. Spent a lot of time in Richland Center. Saw mom, went to Shawano, saw dad, my stepmom Mary up there. So, yeah, it's a magical time of the year, right? During the holidays.
The most wonderful time of the year, I hear. Todd is a former Republican Capitol staffer for the Wisconsin State Senate. Heard most recently on civic media, now doing some freelance work and more to come. And we're happy to have his perspective on some state political headlines to start off the week and the new year. And Todd, where I wanted to start with you in terms of what we missed during the break was Assembly Speaker Robin Vos telling an interviewer the past couple of days here about the schedule for the next legislative session, the current session. It's not over yet. It's on its holiday break. And it could go as late as, say June or so before they all go home to campaign. But Speaker Vos once again confirmed that he's going to do what he's done the past, I think, 3 election cycles, and that's give legislators a 10-month paid vacation. They're going to do about 2 weeks worth of work between January and February, and then that's it. And my point in bringing you in, Todd, as a former Capitol staffer, is to say this is not normal.
Yes and no. Like this is when you sent me the notes, like what we're going to talk about today. I thought, okay, well, here, because normally, even though you're a longtime Democrat, former state senator on the Democratic Party, I spent 30 years schlepping for Republicans and being a flack. Most of the time these days, we agree on most of the stuff. I'm not saying I don't disagree with you on this, but now that we're free and clear, just to say what we really think, at our old gig, I think I was the only host on the network who was kind of like, yeah, whatever, and everybody else was just infatuated by this. And you and I are old enough to remember a guy named Wally Kanicki, former
Right.
Democratic Speaker of the State Assembly. Chuck Qualla, former Democratic Senate Majority Leader. Russ Decker, former Senate Majority Leader. Judy Robson. Judy wasn't as bad as the other two. But the point is that since God was a boy, Democrats have done the same thing, largely, in my opinion, in having these short sessions on campaign years. Granted, maybe in the past, maybe Democrats didn't do it as much. And when I bring this up to most people now in their 30s, even 40s, they're like, well, that was 15 years ago. That was 20. Well, okay, but still it happened. And so, yeah, I think that the current iteration of LeMahieu in the Senate and Vos in the Assembly have made it worse and are doing less work. But here's the question, Pat. You actually got yourself elected to the legislature. I'm a 2-time loser to the trying to get to the Assembly. Do you think that people really voters in Wisconsin, do they care about this issue? Because you and I spent 3 years going around this state with our friend Trygve Olsen, listening to people, and never once did this issue of, well, those guys and girls down in the Madison, they don't work hard enough. I never heard that.
No, but I take my TV experience to that where I always got angry with hearing from consultants that, we've got to do more weather. We've got to do weather on the 1s, weather on the 8s. Let's do weather on the 5s as well. Because you'd ask people on the street, what do you want from the news? And they'd say, well, the weather. I want to know whether to put on a raincoat or not. That's fine, but that's not what the news is. That's what people will say. I don't expect anybody to say, gee, the legislature, they were all done by, February 17th. The governor is going to give his State of the State address on February 17th or 18th, and then they're breaking like the 19th or 20th, and then that's it. I don't expect people to say that. But I do expect that if people hear that the legislature is a full-time gig and that they're getting a full-time paycheck and that they are, basically by February or March largely done in collecting a paycheck, it's got to do one of two things. It's either got to get them to say, well, did legislatures once upon a time work harder? The answer is yes. The times that I was there, we met well into the spring. Or to say, why is this still a full-time thing if they're not going to meet that often? On the Republican side, I understand it because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The best way to show that government doesn't work is to not show up for work. And so that's the point that, I would make and other people would make as well. I don't feel like our cynicism should let people off the hook for not putting a full-time effort into the job of being a legislator.
Well, and I obviously I didn't work for you, but our paths crossed a little bit of time, for a while at the Capitol. I knew you to be your reputation was that your office was really good at constituent relations and that you were in your district. The people that I worked for, State Senator Dale Schultz and former U.S. Congressman Scott Klug. I mean, Dale, when we had a short session like that, and I'm glad you brought that, because when he was Senate Majority Leader, they worked a little bit longer into the spring as well. I don't think that they quote unquote went back to the district till maybe April-ish or something like that. But he went back and held, he was always on the staff. Look, when I want the schedule for the next 2 months for office hours, and he was holding office hours 4 or 5 days a week. And so if a legislator, to your point, is actually doing their job correctly, in my opinion, if you're not on the floor, if you're not in session in the Capitol in Madison, you should be going around holding office hours, listening and answering to your constituents. If they're doing that, then I don't have such a problem with a shorter session. But I think you and I probably both agree, speak for yourself, I think that unfortunately that's becoming more and more rare.
Yeah. Talking to Todd Allbaugh here, former Capitol staffer, about some of the headlines coming out of the state Capitol. And of course, I just mentioned Governor Evers will be giving a state of the state before we really get into full campaign mode and we end up with a new Wisconsin governor by the time all is said and done here. We've seen how the race, how the field has filled out on the Democratic side, and there's 2 on the Republican side. And now you get to be as candid as you want about where the field is and how you think this is all going to turn out.
I appreciate that. Can we just go back for a second?
Sure.
And I mean, to your earlier points, if you know that the legislature, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, and for the record, I do disagree with them having such a short floor period or actually a realistic floor period is so short. I think they should be there longer. I agree with you on that. But knowing that, why is Governor Evers waiting until the last week of the known floor session to have a state of the state?
To make that exact point is to say, you guys aren't done, and here's all the things I've asked you for 8 years. Now, Tony, God bless you. I'm glad you're following along. He writes in on Facebook, care about the outcomes, less about the process. Point noted, Tony. And that's what I think Tony Evers is getting at as well, is while I'm emphasizing the dates, Tony and Tony are right to say, look, there's still stuff that we could be getting done. There's still women who aren't being covered, for their health care more than 60 days after they deliver a child. There's still more that can be done on the issues of affordable housing and a lot of other things. This is a group in charge right now that's just like, well, we don't want to spend any extra time talking about problems that we could be solving. We just want to take our marbles and go home and campaign on what little we did.
I get that, but I voted for Evers every time he was on the ballot, whether it was state school superintendent or for governor, including the primary in 2018. By the way, so I like the guy. I'm thankful he's been our governor, but I think his staff doesn't always serve him well. I think they're sometimes too cute by half, and I think what you just said, we're going to prove a point and put this spotlight on. I think he would have been better served to do the state of the state this week or next and say, look, I think you guys should stay here for another 2 months, but you're dead set on going home. So I'm giving you time. Here's what we need to accomplish in the next 15 days. Because by doing it so short, I think it just, Evers could have, I don't know. I just don't like the game. I don't like the gamesmanship.
Yeah.
But to the governor's race proper, I think this is really interesting, Pat, particularly on the Democratic side. I know we're going to get to Tom Tiffany on the Republican side, how that intersects with national issues, international issues. But let's talk about the Democratic side. You being a former state legislator, lifelong Democrat, know that side of the aisle much better than I do. But it's been a really interesting few months here, or weeks, I guess, maybe is a better way to put it. And you've got Mandela Barnes, who Democrats seem to, at least some, are enamored with. Give him props, in my opinion. He's done a great job getting media out there. He's sucked up all the energy basically from all the media and all the press, and we're getting interviews. But I don't know, Pat. I was at the Wisconsin State Convention a couple of years ago. I didn't go last year, but was there the year before. You and I have both been to a lot of these in our own particular parties in the past. And here's the thing that I noticed, that you always, in my opinion, as a staffer, you always got to sit back and watch how it's playing, how the room's playing out, right? And I saw a lot of younger people, say high school through mid 30s, going up to Mandela Barnes and engaging him. I didn't see a lot of the older, more established Republican Party going up to him. Those people were going to people like Tammy Baldwin and wanted to really talk to her. Even Governor Evers to a certain degree. I think that Mandela Barnes's Democratic base in a primary are young people. And the people that I talk to, and I'm not that person anymore, but the people, Democrats, young, they are angry. They want action. They don't want to wait anymore. They're tired of being told, wait your turn. This is how government works. And I think that Mandela Barnes basically just jumping ahead to the general election in his mind and trying to take on Tom Tiffany. I think he's leaving a lot on the table with young Democrats who are going to be the grassroots people who are going to vote. I don't know that he's the coordinated candidate that some people like to make him be, Mandela Barnes.
Not this time.
And I think that you have people like Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, who's out there doing a lot of grassroots efforts. Reportedly, she has a $2 million commitment from Lieutenant Governors Association on the Democratic side of the aisle. And quite frankly, I still think the dark horse in this race, because there are so many people, and you could talk about this, how it divides votes. I think Francesca Hong is still in this thing because she is everywhere. She is angry. She is speaking to those Democrats that want to get something done. She's different. I think Kelda Royce is still out there. I think she's probably spending a lot of time raising money right now, and the January 15th reports are going to tell us a lot. But those are the people that right now I think are folks to watch.
Mm-hmm. So let's again. I know all these folks. I love Francesca, Kelda, all of them. So let me phrase it in a way that it just takes it right to the point. Is that a lot of people loved Bernie Sanders too. There's always people that love the person who's just going to say things and connect with, say, younger voters. And how many times have we then looked at the voter turnout and it wasn't the young voters who decided these things? And I'm not trying to be cynical about being, the loudest or most liberal candidate that's out there, but the establishment is the establishment for the reason, because it's made up of a whole lot of middle-aged voters across rural Wisconsin who maybe don't want to take that risk. And that's where maybe say a Sarah Rodriguez or a David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive, comes into this, or maybe one of the the business folks that are in this race as well. This is just my way of saying, Todd, I have no idea how this is going to play out come August.
All right, but now let's. This is fantastic, because not that we were. I mean, I felt I was genuine. I never held back, really, I guess, when we were at our old gig. But if I'm just truly speaking from my gut here, I don't think these. Well, I can't even remember his name. The guy who was the Secretary of Administration for Evers, the Milwaukee business guy, Brennan or whatever the hell his name is.
Joe Brennan. Yeah.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him until he's floated trial balloons for governor. Now, I can tell you that the Clouser was Tommy Thompson's administrative secretary. I mean, most of the time, as people that follow this stuff, more than the average voter or listener, I never heard of this guy, Brendan. So he might be a very nice man, very popular in Milwaukee, hasn't got a chance. Melissa, what's her name? Missy Hughes. I heard her on one of our former colleagues' shows, and the host asked her about a healthcare question. I have to get back to you on that. You don't launch a gubernatorial campaign if you're not ready to answer. She's not ready for prime time either. So those two. Then you got what's his name? The guy that runs around, former starts with an H.
Brett Halsey.
That's not. He's nothing. That's not going anywhere. So those people, just forget about it. Then you've got Crowley, who I think is really good and has opportunity, but you're gonna split the Milwaukee Democratic vote down there with Hull or with Crowley, with Barnes, even maybe some degree Rodriguez, because she was in the assembly from that area. Then you've got the African American black vote in Milwaukee kind of being split a little bit, maybe between Crowley and Barnes. what do you think about this, Pat?
And don't forget the Madison vote then gets split by
Right.
Francesca Hung and Kelda Royce.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So what do you think? So as you and how many people is it? 8, 10 now in total who are in this thing?
Mhm.
I mean, it's not going to take a lot of votes to win this primary.
Right.
So in my opinion, you tell me if you think I'm crazy. I know I am. Money, number one, who's going to January 15th? We're going to find out who has the money, and then number two, who has the ability with those two areas, Milwaukee and Dane County, who have the largest amount of Democratic votes in a Democratic primary. If those are split, then it becomes the outlying parts of the state, everything but those two counties. I think Rodriguez has a great shot as a statewide office holder and someone who's hustled out there. Maybe that's where Kelda Royce's hustle across the state comes in, and Francesca Hong. I mean, it's going to be very interesting.
Yes, there's just no other way. From now till then, all those factors: who gets on the road the most and makes those connections, who raises the money, who gets on TV first and does a good job at it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, all this time, you'll have Tom Tiffany and Josh Schoeman to a lesser degree, just going after Mandela Barnes, presuming that he's the one that's going to emerge from all this. So you have so many different dynamics at work.
And by the way, again, I'm not sure who Mandela Barnes' team is, but again, his launch video was one of the worst of all the Democrats. In like a sound stage or a warehouse and a camera and all these, I mean, like Francesca Hong, Sarah Rodriguez, Kelda Royce, all of their videos were out with the people of Wisconsin. And this guy is, I mean, his team is terrible in my opinion.
Todd Allbaugh is with us here, and we mentioned Tom Tiffany, and you kind of teased it. We were going to talk about it, the national aspect of Tom Tiffany as a congressman from the 7th District up here up north, and for a state senator for a long time before that. You know, a very dependable acolyte of Scott Walker's, and then later, of course, of Donald Trump's. And he was, of course, right on the Johnny on the spot to say about Trump, you know, invading Venezuela. Hey, let's go for it. That doesn't surprise me because Tom Tiffany supported the last time Trump attempted a coup. He went so far as to sign on in support of a lawsuit, Tom Tiffany did, that would have thrown out Wisconsin votes in the 2020 election. And it just has to make you wonder if Tom Tiffany is the Republican nominee, and then if Tom Tiffany is elected governor. I mean, we saw some stuff out of Scott Walker and legislative Republicans in terms of power grabs. What does a Governor Tom Tiffany look like in Wisconsin?
If Wisconsin voters could take anything away, particularly Democratic voters in this state, just when you think it couldn't possibly be worse, Donald Trump has proved, yes, it can be. And I think that's the case with Tom Tiffany. If you thought that Scott Walker did damage to this state, if you were unhappy with Scott Walker, just wait for Governor Tom Tiffany. Because at least I think, it's not an exact equation here or equally looking at things. But if you look at Trump's first term, he was surrounded with people like Reince Priebus, former Wisconsin Republican Party chairperson, General Kelly as a chief. Those people who actually said, look, we know our boss is kind of nuts, but there are certain guide rails, i.e., the Constitution we have to follow. And I think that Walker, I don't know if I can give Walker that much credit, but I know some of the people around him were kind of like that. I think Act 10 was an abomination right off the bat. But I think that Tom Tiffany is not going to surround him with people that have any regard to Wisconsin, with the Wisconsin Constitution, with our traditions here. It is just going to be genuflecting politically to Donald Trump on whatever he wants. And Katie barred the door. And it can get worse. And so I think that hopefully voters think about this. I think you're right. I mean, I think that Josh Schoeman's probably done when the money comes out. You and I had a chance to talk with him briefly up at the Northern Wisconsin State Fair up at Chippewa Falls this summer. And look, I don't agree with the guy, but I'll say this. I thought he was cordial. We watched him for 2 hours. The Republican Party booth is right across from us. I thought he was great as a retail politician. He seemed to actually be listening to people. I think if you said, look, you got to choose one of them, I would take Schoeman over Tiffany, but I think that Tiffany is all but the nominee.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the money part, because who amongst us didn't appreciate all throughout New Year's Eve day The tech. It's the last day. We got to raise the money. Send us your money before midnight, and we'll do that again every 3 months or so from now until then. Mm-hmm. But first, we'll see, what is it, January 15th or so. Yeah. We'll see how the 2025 finance reports came out. So Tiffany and other Republicans are going to run, it seems quite clear, on the 400-year veto from Tony Evers, which, preserved an increase in state aid going to public education. But Tony Evers does not have the power to tax anybody a dime. That comes through the legislature writing the budget. It comes from school boards and other local units of government that'll do it. And you and I have been advocating for public schools a long time to try to let people know it's not a 400-year veto that increases the potential for state aid that caused everybody's property tax bills to be so damn high, when they came out last month.
Yeah, and I referred to this a little bit earlier in saying too cute by half sometimes by the Evers administration. Let me say this up front to your point. For those that used to watch this at our old gig, know this, maybe others today might not. I come from a family of educators, from my grandmother down to my sister and brother-in-law, my parents included. You will not find a bigger supporter of Wisconsin public schools than me, I don't think. But I do think there have been, I think the Evers, what they did here, for those that might not know, they used Wisconsin's fairly liberal, small L, veto power of the governor to do something good, because the legislature, to your point, Pat, Republican legislature was not funding public schools correctly. And so the governor tried to do something, to use a word, ameliorate, to make it better in the veto process. He got creative in how he was able to veto that through line items and created this 400-year funding, little bit of funding for public schools. I think it was kind of cutesy. I think it looked weird because most voters nobody should be able to put something, in power for 400 years. I think that part of it was a mistake. I think the attention and the point the governor is trying to make is good, in that, and you're seeing this, Pat, all across this state. More referendums are coming, public school referendums, and the tide is unfortunately kind of turning, and people are saying, look, we've been past 1, 2, 3 referendums. Where's this money going? And you and I have talked about this with Wisconsin Public Education Network over in Green Bay here last year. We had State Representative Ahmad Wagner Rivera on, great young legislator, Democrat from the Green Bay area. They worked with the Green Bay School Board and the Green Bay City Council and Mayor Gingrich there in Green Bay. Why aren't we doing this across the state? They said, we're going to itemize everybody's property tax bill, so you know where your money is going, your tax dollars. And it turns out when people got this, oh, so when you say I'm being taxed for my schools, wait, a big part of that is being siphoned off for private schools? Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff we should be doing in the state to inform voters, and less on the 30-second attack ads, in my opinion.
Yes, exactly. That kind of transparency that we've been talking about, literally for years now, has to be a central issue in this race as well, because people understand that people aren't advocating to get rid of private schools. They're saying, why are public tax dollars, so many of them now, almost $1 billion a year, being skimmed off away from our public schools and going to these voucher programs? Not enough people know about it, and thankfully we've got people like Chris Hambuck-Boyle working for the Public Education Network, who puts up a comment on Facebook, and thank you as well, Chris, for all that you do. But again, when you hear about this 400-year veto, remember that the 400-year veto excuse is bullshit. And I love being able to do this.
It's a spicy Pat Kreitlow now. I love every part about it.
3 of them already. I don't know when Facebook pulls the plug or YouTube on this, but it is. It's absolute crap. It's the 400-year veto has nothing to do with why your property tax bills are higher. It's a legislature that, for all of its time being controlled by Republicans, has never kept state aid up to the rate of inflation. And so school districts fall further and further behind, and therefore have to rely on referendums just to maintain current services, not to do anything big, new, or fancy. And honestly, Todd, if Democratic candidates for governor and legislature, if that line isn't coming out from them repeatedly, They are doing themselves a huge disservice, and help the taxpayers and the voters understand the need for transparency on where their money is actually going, and not just being gobbled up by public schools. It's not.
Yeah, and two real quick points. People say, well, doesn't the state take care of 2/3 of the funding for that? That was something, whether you liked him or not, former Republican Governor Tommy Thompson, the legislature put into action in the 90s. My former party ate away at that over the course of time. And you and I both know that ain't true anymore. And local districts, local taxpayers are having to pick that up. And now this last budget, which was signed by Governor Evers and a couple of Democrats voted for it, so it's bipartisan. But remember, and you keep me honest, Pat. In that budget, we're putting more money into public schools. Technically true. But none of that went to the general fund. Right. It was for special needs, special education, which is great. But the local school districts got almost nothing out of that.
Right. And that's why you're going to see more referendums again this cycle. And, candidates need to be helping the voters and the taxpayers understand why that is. Just last one really quickly here. Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan resigned over the weekend, mostly, because of the conviction on obstruction, which is going to be appealed, of course. But rather than stay on the bench while this is all happening, she said in so many words, let's avoid a circus in the legislature about whether, she should be impeached or not. Your thoughts on Judge Dugan doing the right thing and where the court case goes from here?
I don't think she had much of a choice. I think she fell on her political sword, so to speak, because I think if she would have not have done what she did, Robert Vos, the legislature, would have done impeachment proceedings. Every Democratic gubernatorial candidate would have been asked about it. Most of the Democratic legislative candidates would have been asked about it. It would have been a political albatross for Democrats going into this year. So I didn't agree with the charges. I didn't agree with how things went down, but a jury of her peers found her guilty. She has an appeals process, which she has the right to do. But I think she did the right thing, and I applaud Judge Dugan for doing something good for her fellow Wisconsinites.
Todd Allbaugh, you can follow him. His new, I like this. It's not TikTok. It's TikTod. He's doing TikTods now.
Kind of, sort of. Yeah. We're doing that, and also ToddAllbaughShow.com. We're working on some things there. So
ToddAllbaughShow.com. Mm-hmm. There you go. Do you want to stick around for the history lesson, or at least
sure.
the revamped history lesson?
As it turns out, Pat, I do have some time.
You do have some time. Hey, well, I got to go to work at some point here, but I appreciate this. So hang around, and we'll do that next. Today's history lesson here. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're up north. All right, here's the bad news about no longer being on the radio. We don't have the music license that a radio station has that allows us to play tunes. And thanks to really strict enforcement by the record companies, putting tunes on social media without a license is a big old no-no. So all we can really do is talk about this day in history. And later I'll put some links in the comments section in case you want to listen to some of these tunes a little later. Although, it's always possible Todd just sings along on something
We'll see how many I know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if I were on the radio,
yeah.
For this day in 1940, the FCC heard its first demonstration of FM radio. So, of course, you got to play Steely Dan's No Static at All, which is how this all would have started. On this day in 1914, the Ford Motor Company announced an 8-hour workday and a minimum daily wage of $5 plus bonuses. And Henry Ford, if I'm not mistaken, not the world's most pro-worker guy, but he certainly saw where the pendulum was going on things and said, here's how we make things a bit more efficient.
Yes, I think I heard about that today on today's October 31st episode of The Rick Smith Show. So I think they were talking about that, but go ahead.
On this day in 1973, Bruce Springsteen's debut album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, was released. It included the unsuccessful single Blinded by the Light, which was later picked up by Manfred Mann's Earth Band and topped the charts in 1977 with the version that we all know and love. On this day in 1975, The Wiz premiered at the Majestic Theater in Broadway, the adaptation of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz with an all-black cast starring future disco diva Stephanie Mills. as Dorothy. And then in 1978, the production was turned into a movie starring Michael Jackson and Diana Ross with songs like Ease On Down the Road.
Ease on down the road. Da-da, ease on down the road.
It's funny that that is...
You got to ease on down the
road. That's
road.
just enough lyrics not to get us in trouble, so I appreciate that.
All right, very good.
And I will not
Broadway,
ask you...
see, jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
Now you're in my genre.
And I will not ask you for your interpretation of Rapper's Delight, which on this day in 1980... became the first rap song to hit the top 40. It only got as high as number 36, but history had been made nonetheless. And finally, a very melancholy birth anniversary. Diane Keaton would have been 80 years old today. Oh. And of course, the Wisconsin tie-in of playing Annie Hall from Chippewa Falls. How nice was that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. Great actor.
Yes. Hey, congratulations as well to the UW River Falls football team.
Yes.
National champions.
Did you watch that last night?
I did not. I went looking for it Saturday night, and I'm looking I can't find this game anywhere, only to find out that it was on Sunday.
It was incredible. They deserve all the accolades and more of what they accomplished. They knocked off one of the big powerhouses right now in Division III college football. And their coach is fantastic. The mentality, some of these players, and I think Francesca Hong had this up on her Twitter feed. A couple of their big players are service industry workers, bartenders in River Falls, and these guys are, there's not a big NIL budget in Division III. No. Here they are bartending, and then they go out and win a national championship. And our friend Trygve Olsen, a River Falls native. So congrats to everybody in River Falls, and it's just a huge accomplishment.
We say all this about the River Falls football team to avoid talking about the Packers. It was an exhibition game, let's face it, against the Vikings. But, even by exhibition game standards, not very good.
It was terrible.
I don't think off to the playoffs.
They haven't got a chance.
Now there's good news and bad news. They're playing the Bears in Chicago in the wild card playoff game. The good news is it's a primetime game, Saturday night, 7 p.m. The bad news is it's an NFL playoff game on Amazon Prime. Really? Prime? I
know.
Gets a playoff game?
It's terrible. That's just. I didn't know the Amazon was going to get a game.
Yeah.
Let alone the Packers game.
Just again,
does that tell you what the NFL thinks about this game? Because they have control over who goes where.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think they knew that. Saturday night we'll all get our cheese curds and our old fashions and we'll watch it. But a lot of other folks, not so much. They got other games to work on. Yeah. Todd, stick around. I'm going to do our question of the week before we wrap things up here. And again, you can find Todd Allbaugh at it's toddallbahshow.com. I got that right, didn't I?
Yep. Or the TikTok. It's simple. And because there's very few of us, so it's just at Todd Allbaugh on Twitter and TikTok and Insta, whatever.
All right. Appreciate that. Thank you, Todd. Our question of the week is coming up next. All right, here it is, our question of the week, where we ask, what kind of voter are you now? And this was in our Sunday morning newsletter. You can get Sunday Mornings with Pat Kreitlow through upnorthnewswi.com/newsletter. It's our weekly wrap-up of Wisconsin political news, and you get our question of the week. So what kind of voter are you going to be in 2026? A, I'm an all-star. I even vote in the August primaries. I vote in the April spring elections. B is I'm an all-star now, but I have to admit that's only been over the past few years. I wonder why that is. C, I've got some work to do. I do vote in November, but I need to do a better job of taking part in the August primaries and the spring elections. And D, I'm not a regular voter. I still don't really think my vote makes a difference. Now, needless to say, people subscribing to a politics newsletter, I didn't see a lot of D votes on there. What I did get, let's see, from some of the folks out there was Hillary in Green Bay saying, I vote in every rinky-dink election because it matters. My parents taught me if I wasn't an active citizen, I didn't have a right to complain. There's Kim, who said, I will admit that in 2016 I did not vote because while I can't stand Trump, I wasn't sold on the idea of Hillary Clinton either, a decision I now regret. Not voting is no longer an option for me as I consider what the future of this country will be. be. And finally, Isla writes in, I vote every single time it's available. At the age of 91, I will continue to vote and study the issues. Isla, thank you so much for being one of well over 100 responses that came in on Sunday alone, and they'll continue to come in throughout the course of the week as readers promise to show up in 2026. So you'd better do the same. You can already get your absentee ballots for 2026, by the way, now that we're past the first of the year. Head to myvote.wi.gov. Check your registration status, and there's also a place under the absentee voting where you can make a selection and have all of the absentee ballots for all of the 2026 elections sent to you ahead of time. Take the guesswork out of it. There might be bad weather on election day. There might be other things going on. And so get that all done and get yourself the absentee ballots sent your way. Well, hey, this is fun. We will try to do this a couple of times a week. For sure this Friday with Dr. Kristen Lyerly, who is still recovering from a terrible car crash just before Christmas. So she will update us on her recovery on some serious injuries before she does her usual stellar job of lighting up our mornings. The most important thing, though, is to have you subscribe to our newsletter and share those Up North News social media posts and start thinking about how you're going to live up to my primary demand from you in 2026. Do something. Join a group, join a party, make some calls, donate some time, donate some money. Make 2026 the year of the participatory democracy, because that's the only way that a democracy avoids the kind of sneak attacks that then become the bold attacks that we are starting to see right now. Make this year, America's 250th birthday, a rededication to the actual values that created this country and make our state such a wonderful place to live in, especially when we have elected leaders who want to lead and to work and maybe not take 10-month paid vacations. Just my thought on that. So thanks again for being here. Keep an eye on this page as we continue to have updates along the way. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. I'm Pat Kreitlow, and we'll see you sometime soon for another beautiful morning up north.